Well, let's talk about some of those headlines because President Trump has been facing a lot of criticism right now from both sides of the aisle over events from the past few weeks, including the president's trip to El Paso and Dayton, Ohio, after some shootings that happened there. That trip arguably didn't go so well. That is what critics say. He also made recent remarks on race, and that have led many to criticize him, including someone who was previously one of his most staunch defenders. That is Anthony Scaramucci, the hedge fund founder and former White House comms director for 11 days. Anthony Scaramucci also wrote a book about Trump called The Blue Collar President. He now says that the president is off the rails and that the honest people in the room know that he is crazy. Anthony joins us now on the phone to discuss, as well as our own Julie Hyman, who is the co-host of our show On the Move. Thanks, Julie. Anthony, what has changed for you, and what would you say to critics right now who are saying that you are just trying to sort of get back in the press?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You put yourself in my shoes and just ask yourself, why would I do that, right? I mean, I get enough press, and remember before I was involved with the president, I had my own television show, so I really don't need to be in the press. What I need to do is run my business and look out for my country and my family. And so when someone is dividing the country with racist rhetoric and saying things that are causing people to literally anger up and get into fights and act crazy, and he's giving people a license to hate, you got to call it out. Otherwise, what are you doing here? So for me, I did that for my grandparents. You know, when they were telling my grandmother to go back to the country that she came from, you know, she produced 3 children, one of which was my mom, 2 of which fought in the Second World War, one on Normandy Beach during that invasion, and the other one in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge. So I don't know, you want her to go back to the country that she came from? So to me, that sort of rhetoric is nonsensical. And so what I said, and I'll be very specific about it, is I very much so support the president and his economic agenda directionally where he's taking the country, but can you dial back some of the racist rhetoric? And so, you know, then he fires out Twitter screeds at you if you have one step out of line. And so, unfortunately, we're dealing with a demagogue, and demagoguery basically suggests that you can have no disagreements and you have to fall in line with this sort of mandatory obedience. And so for me, that's not going to work. And when you dig in a little bit deeper, when I talk to my friends that are still inside the administration, inside the White House, cabinet members, ex-cabinet members, they're all saying the same thing. You know, he doesn't listen, and he's dividing the country.
Well,
and so
Anthony,
you guys are, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you say you're talking to people in the cabinet and whatnot. You're, though, one of the few people who is being very vocal about this, right? So I'm curious, are you sort of the tip of the spear here, or to put it another way, the sacrificial lamb for Republicans who maybe don't yet have the courage to speak out publicly? Is there a sort of underground movement, if not in the White House, maybe in the GOP? Because we have not heard too many call-outs. I mean, this is pretty rare here.
There's a lot of fear out there, but you guys are pretty good journalists, so you know that there are many people that would talk to you off the record and would tell you that the guy's nuts, but they're figuring out a way to work around him, or they're figuring out a way to deal with him in the context of his nuttiness. And so very far from a sacrificial lamb, by the way, because I'm not a sacrificial lamb. I'm just an honest person that happens to love my country.
Well, I guess what I mean is you come out front, you take the flack from the president, and then perhaps others follow you. I guess what I'm asking is, Anthony, are you the beginning of a movement? Are we going to hear from others in the GOP who are going to be saying publicly what you're saying?
That's going to be up to them, okay? My prediction is that you will, because usually what happens is once you start the full exposure and people gain confidence. Right now, psychologically, people are like, okay, the guy's nuts, but man, Scaramucci's stupid, or Anthony Scaramucci's stupid because he's doing this. You know, I'm not talking about myself in the third person. I'm talking about what they would say about me. Okay, and so, okay, that's fine. But the truth of the matter is down deep, they know what I'm saying is true. And it's a career move. It's a self-preservation move. And that's what most people do, well, in a period of time where they need courage and they need to step up to to the plate and need to really pick between right and wrong, a lot of times people won't do that. If you grow up in the projects, you never yell, help, please, I need help, I'm being robbed. No one comes out to help you. But if you yell fire when you're in the projects, everyone opens the door. They got to get the hell out of the apartment. So I understand that, and that's a good part of human nature, and I get that. John Kennedy wrote 3 books. His last one was Profiles in Courage. He said that was his slimmest book, and people asked him, why? Well, there's not a lot of courage out there. So I get all that, but I'm not a sacrificial lamb. I'm somebody that's speaking the truth about a situation, love my country, and directionally, you can't have somebody in the White House that's only talking to themselves and only taking their own counsel, and then everybody else in the system is loaded up with fear. And
Anthony,
so what the president does, yeah, go ahead.
Let me continue off what Julie asked you, though. When you talk about wanting to see him dial back the racist rhetoric, I think there are those out there who say, well, sort of too late for that. It's been said, and to dial it back, it's, now the question becomes, for people out there who are prominent Republicans, who are criticizing the president right now, what does it take for those prominent Republicans to support someone else in 2020? What does all this criticism right now mean for 2020? What will you do?
I mean, you probably look. Which prominent Republicans are criticizing the president?
Well,
which ones?
Romney has.
A little.
Romney's criticizing the president? Not really. I mean, he's said a few benign things about the president.
Right. They send a few vanilla tweets criticizing the racist remarks.
There's nobody really criticizing the president because they're afraid of him. And so what happens in a situation like this, and this is the definition of a bully, you have to think of what he's doing. He's using the office of the presidency and the presidential Twitter account to go after his fellow citizens. Okay, and so as I pointed out yesterday on Twitter, there isn't anything more anti-American than that. Okay, we don't like bullying in our culture. We like underdogs. Everybody has watched the show Rudy or Rocky. We don't like bullies in our culture. Okay, and so he's using the office of the presidency and that Twitter account to bully people. And then what happens is like, oh my God, I don't want to get hit with a presidential tweet. So I'm going to stay in line. I'm going to fall in line.
So, Anthony, what does all of this mean? To Dan's question, what does this mean for 2020? Who would you support? Another Republican? Would you support a Democrat who's running against the president?
I'm a Republican, so I'm not like the Republicans. There are some Republicans, former Republicans, that have left the party, like Max Boot and Joe Scarborough and Bill Kristol. So they're no longer part of the Republican Party. I'm a Republican. I'm a registered Republican. I'm not leaving the party. But I do think that he needs to be challenged, and I think he's gotten very tired, and I think he's lost an edge to what he's doing, and he's not listening to anybody. And, it's classic egomania. Once you get egomania into the seventh power, it becomes very, very self-destructive. So we're going into that zone, and so, listen, for me, it's incumbent upon me to message to people, I'm a loyal guy. I got fired and humiliated 2 years ago when I left the White House. Didn't bother me at all. I got right back up, as you guys mentioned, wrote a book, dusted myself off, stayed loyal to the president's agenda because there's a lot of features to that agenda that I genuinely like.
Well, let's.
I don't like the racism, and so I'm telling people, the bumper sticker should be same policies, less crazy.
So I want to ask you about the agenda as well, Anthony, because I think you have a lot in common with a lot of people in the GOP who have made, if you will, a devil's bargain, right? They've accepted or at least turned a blind eye to what many see as racist rhetoric because they like the economic policies. But now that we're in a trade war with China that has really no end in sight, now that we are starting to see a lot of economic indicators roll over, we see, turmoil in the markets. We see the market up today because maybe there's a reprieve on tariffs. But what's so great about this economic agenda at present?
Well, there's a much longer question, right? But at the end of the day, the components that I liked and still like about the president's plan are the elements of deregulation and delayering the administrative state. I think that's a casebook study on releasing the animal spirits that Americans are capable of in their own economy, and so you can touch off a lot more growth. The stuff that I don't like is the aggressive spending. You can see sizably that we're way under in terms of where our tax revenue should be, and we're way over in terms of where our entitlement spending is and other governmental spending. And it's very wasteful. I mean, no one in Washington is actually holding each other accountable to that spending. And so those are the things that I don't like. The trade situation, unfortunately, we have to right-size that, and we have to create more symmetry between ourselves and the Chinese government as it relates to trade. Having said that, I've often disagreed with the president on tactics and strategy. You could have set it up in a way, and I wrote an op-ed about this last July, where we could have teamed up with the Europeans, both of which have grievances, us and them, with the Chinese. You had 46% of the world's economic input, 600 to 700 million people, and we could have collectively bargained against the Chinese. That would have been way more successful than we're doing now. Moreover, there's a lot of unpredictability to the tariffs. And so what happens is business leaders, large and small, they slow down their capital investing. And the ironic thing is many of us on the Republican side would have been critical of the Obama administration for the excess regulation. But the president is actually doing something very similar, where the lack of predictability on tariffs and the direction of where they're going is causing people to get to the sidelines with their capital. And so could have been done a lot differently, could have been done better. But listen, I'm not a Monday morning quarterback on that. I don't think any of those policies, as good as some of them are, outweigh what he's now doing. Right. Okay, and so for me, you could say it was a devil's bargain. I would see it a little bit differently. It was loyal to the party. I was with Scott Walker and Jeb Bush. Donald Trump asked me to join his campaign. I went in and joined his campaign. I didn't expect to have the media surrogacy job that I ended up having. I was more of a traditional fundraiser. And then, I didn't realize that I was going to have this sort of political melee with Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus. But, hey, look, it is what it is. I'm here now. I've been thrust into this thing, love my country, have lived the American dream, and, I have to call it out for what it is. And so it's gotten worse. In my opinion, in the beginning, it was, okay, he's a disruptor and he's a wrecking ball, and a lot of people in the middle class and blue-collar communities are sore at the establishment, where Washington establishment politicians have left a vacuum of advocacy for those people for 30, possibly 40 years. And so it was an interesting call, but he hasn't adapted to the presidency. He hasn't grown into the presidency.
Hey, Anthony.
And he's not a president for everybody.
Sticking with that, we basically have to let you go, but real quick, are you going to vote for him for 2020?
Well, I have to see. I think he's going to get primaried. I think it's a very good likelihood that he gets primaried by a person that can beat him. And if that happens,
who could beat him, Anthony?
Who could beat him?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that could beat him. I don't want to mention any names right now because
come on, mention some names.
I don't think those people want to come out right now, but I can tell you there's a lot of people looking at what they would need to do. His support, they say it's 90% and all this other stuff, but down deep, people have the same feeling that most people do. Okay, I like a lot of stuff that's going on, but man, I don't feel right about this. It's classically un-American the way he's handling it. I mean, he just called Chris Cuomo Fredo on his Twitter feed.
Right.
Okay, so you guys aren't Italian, but that's like calling a Jewish person a really bad word that starts with a K.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you guys aren't Italian, but, and I don't want to even mention the word. And it may not be the quote-unquote N word for the African-American community, because that's all tied into the original sin of slavery. But when you call somebody Fredo, that's from Italian origin, that is definitely a racial slur. And so he's racially slurring Chris Cuomo. You may like Chris Cuomo, not like him. He's a personal friend of mine. We obviously disagree on a lot of stuff politically, but you just racially slurred the guy on your Twitter feed. So,
Anthony,
I don't know. If you guys think that's good, I don't think it is. God bless you guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. And Julie Hyman, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Joining the conversation. Always interesting talking to the mooch. Thanks, Julie.